And welcome to the EST Hangout on this Wednesday. It is October 18th. Matt Iwanyk with you here. And I was actually really looking forward to this one because two of the more intelligent people I know, especially when it comes to sports and just overall, the people I love having conversations with are with us here on the Hangout today. It almost actually was 3 for 3 with Jeff Kershell coming in. He's going to now instead come next week. But Paul Sir is with us as well as Steve Sandor. Gentlemen, thank you for coming and joining us.
Matt, thanks for the invitation. I'm a little apprehensive right now when you use the term intelligent.
No.
And so I'm wondering, have you really improved your sales skills that much?
It's honestly full truth. I love chatting with you guys because like it makes me have to think about whatever we're discussing because you guys, whatever it might be that we're discussing, there's a lot of intelligence that comes from you guys. You guys are very thoughtful with what you say, and they're just really enjoyable conversations.
You know, I think back to a television producer years ago on Sun TV back in the day who we were doing a bit, and they switched the topic to like ultimate fighting to something I'd really know not much about. And I said, what am I going to do? I'm here on the studio. And he's like, as long as someone puts a microphone in front of your face, they think that you're smart and they think that you're an expert. So, hey. So fake it till you make it.
That's right.
Well, that is one way of doing it. Steve, you're with Edify Magazine as well as Urban Affairs. And Paul, you no longer with Basketball Alberta. You've retired, is that correct? And now,
yes, I retired from Alberta basketball, staying very actively involved with 3x3 basketball, which is my real side hustle. And with a lot of announcements coming out regarding 3x3, both on the event and programming side coming up. Then a couple of other projects, but a lot of gas in the tank yet. I don't know if that's even the right way to put it anymore. How would you use electric vehicle now?
A lot of juice in the battery.
A lot of juice in the battery. So going to stay real active in it. So and then, but also do some sort of retirement stuff too, like some traveling.
Well, there's a lot to get to with you guys, but like firstly, appearance-wise, I love the flow. The flow looks great.
Thank you. It's one of my. It started in COVID. It was actually a lot longer, but that was my major accomplishment during COVID was to grow my hair long. But yeah, I'm from the '70s, so I wanted to go back to the roots while I still can.
Yeah, and with that whole black outfit, like it's a sharp look that you're pulling in. And we've got to reference the hat.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
This Pittsburgh Pirates hat that you are wearing. I saw as soon as you walked in, that was the first thing I noticed. Like, what an amazing hat Steve's got today.
Yeah, I actually have way too many ball caps at home, and my wife has kind of forbid me from buying anymore.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it's just because I really like wearing them. Usually not when I'm around work, but usually on the weekends I'm rocking some fairly like other version of a team's hat. And so I think when I got like this year, I think I picked up a Cardinals, the spring training cap, which has like their old 60s logo with the Cardinal that looks like really angry about to pitch. I think she said this is enough. Like you have more ball caps than you have shirts, and it's like that's enough.
It's one of the great hats in history in any sport. I really have to say that the Pittsburgh look is just fantastic.
I argue the '79 Pirates that won the World Series over Baltimore.
Willie
Best
Stargell.
uniform in the history of sports.
We are family.
Best jersey ever. And why more teams don't rock black baseball pants, I don't know. And I don't know if any one of my son's teammates in his baseball academy are listening. Black baseball pants, boys. Trust me, washing your white pants is horrible.
You're a parent. Why don't you just get the black pants installed?
You can't get them installed. You have
Like,
the teams all have jerseys. My son's team not only has white pants, they have to have white pants with a red stripe down the side. Do you know how hard it is to find those?
No,
You have to special order
but I'm going to guess really difficult based on this.
You don't pick it off the shelf at Lululemon. That's for sure.
So yeah, it's an art form unto itself, and it's like it is difficult to find this stuff.
It looks like a legit hat from the 70s. Like the way they did this replica hat. Like I legitimately thought that you had this
It's the
that
pillbox
entire
hat.
time.
It's the pillbox, the short build at the square top, which a few teams wore back then. Not just the Pirates, but the Expos actually wore it once. But it was like There are, but the Pirates rocked it where it became part of their identity.
They need
And
to add more of those.
I think they bring out the retros every now and then, but yeah.
We need more of those during the season. I don't know if basketball likes the retros too much. I don't know if the players would like to go back to those short shorts too often. I don't think LeBron and KD or some are wanting those right now.
I don't think that's coming back anytime soon. You see them flirt with it once in a while where they roll the shorts up. Just to not have the length anymore. But no, and having played through that with the short shorts and the long socks.
You played with them?
Oh, yeah. And Fu Manchu. Yeah, I mean, but baseball to me has the best, most iconic logos of any sport, in my opinion. Like still when you look at Pittsburgh, you look at the Yankees, you look at Detroit. I'm from Minnesota. They're not quite back into that era, but I love the TC Twin City logo that the Twins have. But I really like baseball's logos the most of any sports.
Do you know what's interesting about the baseball logos too is a lot of them have just the letter, or
Yes.
the letter is very prominent in their logos, which is something that like you think of all of them, they somehow have that letter that
Yes.
is involved in there.
Yeah, that simplicity of that
Yes.
brand that you just automatically recognize. You would never think that logo was from any other sport.
And
You see a P. A P could stand for a lot of things, but we know that's the Pittsburgh Pirates.
100%.
And I would argue now, even though I'm not the biggest fan, but I think the most beautiful jersey in all sports right now, St. Louis Cardinals. St. Louis Cardinals. I just think all their color schemes, and I've said this, their road jerseys, their home jerseys, their alternates. When they brought back the powder blue, they have their the red cap, and then they have the old school black cap with the Cardinals on the bat that they have. It is just, to me, it is beautiful. It honors the past, but it still looks like totally fresh. Like it doesn't look like it's dated in
They've
any
modernized
ways.
it.
Yeah,
in a
they've
sense.
done a few modernized things, but it is, to me, and I agree. I think just because baseball jerseys, they give you more flexibility to do things. They tend to be, I think, the nicest jerseys in sport. But I think the Cardinals are the standard if you're just for the look, just for a look of a team. I mean, I generally like teams that stick with their classic looks. I don't like a lot of the marketing stuff. I think we're seeing the NFL now when these teams are all bringing out the retro jerseys and everyone going, why did you ever change these jerseys?
I know.
Like, why did you ever go away from Patty
know.
Patriot? Why don't you just stick with the creamsicle Tampa Bay? Why did you ever go away from that? And people are like saying, go back. And I think whenever teams go back into their simpler looks, their original looks, people really buy into it. And there's a reason that we try to over gimmick them. We try to do too much. And then over time, I think you look at any teams, like, the most iconic jerseys are the ones that, I actually said to my son, the white Lakers jersey really bothers me. He's like, why? I go, it just bothers me. I don't like it. He says they wear gold at home and they wear purple on the road. And I'm sorry, the white one really bugs me. And he's like, you're really against the white Lakers jersey. And I go, I don't like it.
Well, it's like, and Tom Gazzola now joining us,
Tom.
and we'll fill you in right away. We're just talking uniforms and jerseys at the moment.
Can I just make one comment?
Go for it.
Some people can wear hats really well. Like
I can't.
I can't either. Like you can't put a hat on me. I look like when I put a hat on, people laugh.
Do they?
It just doesn't work at all. It's like what do you do? I don't know what it is exactly. Head shape, face, whatever. But I look like such a dork when I put a hat on, and especially if I put the hat on backwards. So it's hilarious. But like, you guys look good. Like,
No, I have a smaller head, and it's always the sides that bother me. It's a little too out, so
Yeah.
it's hard for me to get a hat that fits.
Yeah,
so I'm just wearing just because I'm awake too early in the mornings for me to do my hair.
and like Steve, like I couldn't picture you without a hat. Like you just look like you were born
It's
with a
hard,
hat
so
on.
well.
I have a big head, and it's like to find the size is sometimes difficult because I hate the snapback. So I will.
Well, you look great
have
in
to
it.
find them.
But with iconic, like the uniforms and stuff, it's like the story with the Red Wings for so many years that they would like new designers and suppliers who come in with these great ideas and like, yeah, that's awesome. But we want it the way it was before. And like, well, but we could do this and this.
Well, and
that's cool. But no, we're going to stick with
with
this. And they just
sublimation
stay.
now, and you being able to put any design into it, you become a billboard.
Yeah.
For whatever you want to design, and they really do get carried away with color and shape and all this stuff that takes away from the look and feel.
See, baseball, like, I never really thought of them as having like beautiful uniforms. Like I always go to football or hockey and stuff, but when I think about it, they actually are some of the nicer uniforms that you have. Yankees is just classic.
Yeah,
like
Detroit.
You can't go wrong with them. Yeah. I do like basketball's use during a season of their different jerseys that they mix in.
They've done, as the NBA has done in many respects, they've done such a great job of being very mindful and very measured and very deliberate in how they roll their various looks out.
And I think a lot of that is marketing departments all looked at European soccer and went, they change their jerseys every year.
Yes.
Every
all
season.
3 of them.
They will change, and they make subtle changes to the home jerseys, right? They change how the striping looks, or they change how, they change the little pattern on the shirt. They change the road jerseys completely. They change the third jerseys completely. They have different colors that they wear. And that's the one thing that has always messed me up from being a soccer person is why are we so hung up on white road in a day of color television? Like people would say to me, "Oh, the Oilers, I like the blue and the orange." I go, "I like the blue and the orange. They just don't need a white one. They can wear orange some nights and blue when they clash with someone else. It's vice versa. Why do teams still need to have a white jersey? Like, why does everyone have one? Because it makes no sense. Like soccer clubs don't feel they have to have a white jersey.
No, they bring it out every so often as just a different jersey.
Yeah, but
every
if
couple
they have
years
white,
or
that's
something.
just because they want a white color, or they wear white as their home color, as their home strip. But this idea of having to reverse your jersey, because we're black and white at home, we're white with black on the road, makes no sense to me. Be something totally different.
I keep learning things this week. I didn't even think of that's why it's the white at home or whatever. It was black and white television. I didn't even think about that.
Yep. Yeah.
That's
the origin.
That makes a lot of sense, actually.
That was the origin. That's right.
Yeah, and so this has gone away. You know, I don't know how they did this in Europe when they watched games on black and white TV, and they're like, those two teams, maybe the stripes and the jerseys look different, but
Do you guys remember the color rush in the NFL game a few years ago? We had 2 teams that were the same, very similar, and colorblind people couldn't tell the difference.
Yeah.
There's Buffalo and
Was it
New
the
York.
Jets?
The Jets, I
Yeah,
think. Yeah.
And it's the colorblind people are like, I don't know, you kind of know because of the flow of the game.
Green
but-
versus
Yeah.
red.
one team is bad, one
That's
team
what
is
it was,
good.
yeah.
It was green versus red.
But they looked very,
Can't see
very
them.
similar,
Some
almost
people
the
can't see
same,
them, yeah.
because of that. It was just so bright and all of that.
Yeah.
When I was I coached at Concordia for 7 years as their head coach. So we went over to McEwen, and the ACAC always. I don't want to make any commentary on their effectiveness as an administrative body, but they were always, one of their big initiatives was changing home and away jersey colors. Like half the season you'd wear white at home and half the season you'd wear dark. Like they didn't focus, of course, on other more important things like players' grades and stuff, but they really got on the jerseys. So we show up at McEwen with our whites. McEwen, their darks are in the laundry. We can't go back and get our white, so we're playing white on white. So to your point, Steve, and there was a point in a very tight game where McEwen got the rebound and passed to one of our guys who made a layup. So that night, thankfully, it worked to our advantage. But what a nightmare that was! White on white, my God.
Paul, why was there laundry being done while the game was happening?
This is college basketball.
I know,
And, I mean, you've got some poor kid down at the laundromat putting quarters in.
Years ago, I was covering it. I was calling an FC Edmonton game. They were playing the New York Cosmos, and the Cosmos showed up. They had the right jerseys. Edmonton was in blue. The Cosmos were in the whites, but both teams showed up with white socks, and the referee wouldn't start the game because you can't have socks clash.
Oh.
And neither team on the premises had changed socks. The Cosmos did not bring another jersey with them. They didn't bring their green socks or blue socks. So Edmonton had to go and retrieve their socks from their team office, which was out by Argo Road at the time.
Yeah.
Then bring them back to Clark Stadium. The referee after about 10 minutes of debate finally said, "Okay, we can start the game with both teams having matching socks.
But then change at some point.
Yeah.
So they had like a pause to change their socks.
Sock
Well, like,
changing
I think they did a half.
timeout.
If I remember right, they did
That's
a
a
half.
new one.
Yeah.
Whistle, let's hold up. Here you go.
Time to get the
Let's do
socks
the
in.
water
Yeah,
breaks
like,
right now
it's
when
like-
it's a little too
But
hot.
it's
Here we're
like,
gonna do the sock change.
I would love to see that. Like if the NASL is ever big enough to be listed, like delay, when you see it in the sports ticker, delay socks. like that would be good.
Some orange slices being handed out as you're changing your socks. Just complete different. All that's what makes the amateur sport, or not amateur, like the lower level, like not top, so much fun sometimes is that you get these stories. Like you're not getting that in hockey in the NHL. We're not pausing a game because of the uniforms.
Yeah.
Oh, there, yeah. I mean, if you want to go into that, if you want to go down that rabbit hole of minor league sport and the stories that you can get out of that, it's amazing.
And that's where baseball, like they have the stories in minor league ball, right?
Oh my
Like,
gosh.
they have all over of different things, whether it's on the field stuff, off the field stuff, promotions, food items. Dusty, he has a story when he was working for the baseball team in Lethbridge and him having to do everything and just a bunch of different stories. And actually, one of my favorite articles I've read in the last like decade or so, someone just detailed their summer as an intern at a minor league baseball team and just like the mess that it was and people quitting and just the various promotions that they're trying to do. And that's sometimes what makes sports so fun.
It really is. And it's actually global as well, because like being familiar with the international basketball world and the variation from country to country, league to league, and the mess that is oftentimes, anywhere from players getting paid or their living conditions to the promotions that they run. My son Steve played in a small town in Switzerland, Bancourt, and they had this very quirky little gym with the bleachers on one side and a balcony, and then a stage that they put the seating on. And it seated probably 1,500 to 2,000. Mm-hmm. But they had like 4 dudes up there that were like Vikings, pounding drums into a microphone, into all this wall of speakers to create this unbelievable noise. And where the times that they did it mostly was when the opposing team was shooting free throws. So you'd see these big-armed guys up there just pounding and hammering on these drums with these big hammers into these speakers. So it was just, everybody's hearing was lost that night.
Wow.
Like it was like going to a Rolling Stones concert. And it was just... But there's just so many quirky little local traditions that people attempt to try to create interest and try to create local culture through their sport.
And Europe has takes that to the different
Different
level.
level, yes.
Why can't that come to North America?
Because we're different. I used to think this, and I used to write about this a lot when I was in my 20s, and I was naive. And, and I think when we see like certain soccer ventures in North America, the ones that succeed, the ones that fail, we are very different in North America as sports fans than they are in the rest of the world. Because I don't consider Europe special. Europe is very similar to South America, very similar to Asia, like in the sense that there's that local stories, local passion. Also in the sense that in a lot of these countries, soccer is the major driver, right? Mm-hmm. It is the show. Now it's not necessarily true in some countries, but in a lot of them it is, right? And a lot of the cultures for other sports tend to be borrowed from soccer. North Americans, we're just different. We are built different. The idea is if you, let's face it, if we went in an Oilers game and everyone stood for 2.5 hours and people were lighting flares and singing, there would be people who spent $300 on a ticket saying, this is really bothering me. I just want to have a nice night out. I want to have my food. I want to be able to enjoy this. I don't want to stand up. I don't want to be sort of part of it. In the sense, there's the social contract is different with North American sports fans. We are creatures of comfort. We want to go to the game and we want the luxury boxes. There's a lot of European clubs that had to take luxury boxes out because no one wanted to go in them.
Really?
Wow.
They're, and that, it's not true of all clubs. There's a lot of Premiership clubs that do exceptionally well with their private boxes, but in a lot of the smaller leagues, it didn't work. People just did not want to sit in a sort of roped off area and be made to be special. And you'll see that even with the celebrities. I was watching a Wolverhampton game last year, and There's like, look at this guy drinking a tea in the front with his Wolverhampton scarf, and he was looking all miserable because they were losing. And they focused up and closer, and like, is that Robert Plant? And he's like there, and it's like, yeah, it is him. He's just like sitting with everyone. And I mean, I think Elton John at one point owned Watford, right? Because he saved the club, but like his son was with the club. I don't know if he's still with the club, but Elton John is such an icon there, right? And that. Like, but as a celebrity fan, not like as in someone who sits in this private box is inaccessible. It's probably at the one point where this giant pop star is the most accessible to people is with Watford Football Club because he has his obsession with it, right? And people know about it. And he at one time he owned the team, and that the team plays his songs when they score. But he's there with the scarf on, with the jersey on. When he's there, he's present, and so. We in North America, we buy the jerseys. We love the thing. I think college sports is where you see the atmosphere. But when we get to the professional game, it goes away. We like the creature comforts. We like the private boxes. We like the food being brought to our seats. We want to feel all like the fan experiences. It's like going to any other entertainment event. You want to feel great. You don't want to have to work that hard. I think the college experience in the United States is closest what you'd get to Europe, right? Like when you see an NCAA football game or basketball game, like when you go see a game at Duke at Cameron, and you're like, wow, this is where it's at, right? But you don't necessarily. It peters out, and I think it has to do with the money. I think it has to do with just the way it's ingrained in the community. And I think as well, like, let's face it, in Europe, sports teams, and I get into this, and this is probably, sports is, and I argue this, and probably a lot of listeners would disagree with me, is very, very political, always has been. But in Europe, there is no line. Most of the teams have very strong political affiliations or religious affiliations. And that, like people say, well, there's 10 teams in London. Well, how do you pick which team to support when you have 10 teams in your city? A lot of times you go with your socioeconomic group. You go with certain things about a certain team. Definitely in some places it's about religion. If you cheer for the team that's the team that was traditionally the Catholic team, the team that's traditionally the Protestant team, the team that's traditionally the Jewish team. These things are very, very strong in Europe. There are teams that, like, say when the miners go on strike, will ask their players to be on the picket line with them because they show that support. And I think here, when teams, they're very reticent to sort of say, hey, but just imagine if, like, and mind you, this did hit on Saturday when Daryl Cates and the Oilers had to stand with Israel, and that was very divisive with the fan base. But that would be the kind of stuff you would see in Europe, no matter all the time, and it would be out and about. And not true. And I should say Europe, just South America, you see it. Asia, you see it. There is a strong link between, and they're very overt about it. Here, it's more subtle. The link between politics and sports is strong because it's about your city being better than the other city. Like, if you actually think about it, if you actually stop to think about why do you cheer, why do you care? Why do you care about a bunch of guys you've never met who are making way more money than you? And why do you care so much about why they can put a ball in a basket, stick a ball in a net? Why is it so important to you? And if you actually ask that question of yourself and started getting into that deep conversation with yourself, why am I listening to this sports talk show this morning? Why am I so deeply invested? Because we all are. The questions are, it gets really interesting when you look at yourself. And like cities, teams, countries, they know this. And they know that, like, there's a strong link between identity, between who you are, being about something that's bigger than yourself, and sport. It's really, it's really this hypnotic pull that happens. It fascinates me. I just professional sport and its hold on the general public is something, and as I am part of that, is something that deeply fascinates me.
It is something else. You mentioned the ingrained in the culture. You've been around college in the States and stuff. It does seem very different than the professional sports in North America. If we're going to just leave it to this continent, the college sports in the States, like it matters what school you go to. It matters where your family supports type thing. Like it's just ingrained with your history of life.
Oh, 100%. I'm from the state of Iowa, and I have a nephew and a niece who ran track at the University of Iowa, and we have actually an Edmontonian will be playing for the University of Iowa basketball team, the Hawkeyes this year.
Nice.
Ben Cricky. He played at Jasper Place. He was the leading scorer in the Missouri Valley Conference last year and had a great career at Valparaiso. But because of the COVID year, when you get an extra year of eligibility, he transferred to Iowa to have a chance to play in the Big Ten.
That's a big school. For
Big
basketball.
school, yeah.
For
Well, it's a great-
like
it's a
massive school for basketball.
Well, yeah, great school for basketball, great sports school, and part of exactly what you were talking about, Steven, and what you just talked. My family was at a football game against Purdue a week ago. All the tailgating, all the partying out in the parking lot, and Iowa is one of many schools that are like that. It's not like that everywhere, but it certainly at the major schools with the big traditions and smaller schools, depending on the community. And you can go to some schools and nobody shows up and there's no partying. But the overall culture is driven by what you've just described. 106,000 people at an Ohio State game, 110,000 at the University of Michigan, every home game, never a hesitation. So it is, very much part of the culture. Iowa just played a women's basketball game in Kinnick Stadium, the football stadium, 55,000 people.
Yep.
Nebraska had a women's volleyball game. What was it, 80 or 90,000 people? So, they just, people just rally. They take pride in their community. That the Nebraska past glory days of the Cornhusker football powers are no more, but it doesn't matter. They cling to that history and they take pride in that history. And that really is a point of identification. And it's like, which school do you go to? Which school do you cheer for? It's a big deal.
One thing I love about Iowa football, they do that's where they at the end of the first quarter, I think it is. There's a children's hospital right next to the stadium.
Yes.
And everyone turns around and waves at the children's hospital, and the kids in the hospital could look down and they see the whole stadium and all the players from both sides. They just look up and they give a nice wave. And it's one of the best, most wholesome traditions you'll ever find in sports.
It's so true. I have a niece that actually interns in that hospital.
Oh, yeah?
And she's up there with the kids on some Saturdays, and she said it's. You just, I honestly, I'm getting goosebumps right now. She said, you can't imagine how that impacts the kids and how much that means. And talk about a cultural glue and a sense of pride and caring and wholesomeness about really, truly caring about those who need to be cared about the most.
I highly recommend anyone just go look that up. Like, honestly, if you need a couple minutes, just you just want to see something, go look up Iowa football and the waving at the children's hospital. It's just, there's so many weird traditions you'll find in sports. Some
100%.
are dumb, some are awesome, and whatever. This one just so wonderful and wholesome, and just no one could rip on it. It's just awesome. Who wouldn't want to wave to the children? And like in our city, we want to do lots for the Stollery Children's Hospital. Well,
100%.
They could do just that little thing to brighten up their day just a little bit, and that's just turning around and giving a nice wave.
Yep.
It's just great.
Yeah.
Also, then in college football, like just with the families, I remember there's this one recruit. On draft day, they're known for their hats being in front of them, and they pick the hat to make a show, and this is where I'm going. And this one kid picked like a hat of like Auburn or something, and his mom wanted to go to like Alabama or something like that. And the look of disgust on her face that he went against the family, and it's just like,
oh.
And most people, you should be excited your kid's going to college or university and all that, but here, like, you went against the family by going to that school.
Well, and to that, another quick story about that along those lines, Matt, is there was a Minnesota high school player named Joel Persbilla. This goes back 20-some years ago. 6'11" kid was going to go to he had announced he was going to the University of Arizona, playing for Lute Olson. But then at the press conference, he put the Arizona hat towards his head and then threw it on the ground, stomped on it, and put on a Minnesota Gophers hat.
Wow.
And I mean, it's like, here's this 18-year-old kid. I mean, he was absolutely loathed by, being just ripped by the media, but he wanted to make a statement.
That's the ultimate troll.
Absolutely.
That's too bad you don't have them playing each other a little bit, because him having to go to Arizona or whatever, like.
I know.
Wow.
My late father in Budapest, so this was 50, 60, 70 years ago. He was dating my mom, and my grandfather was a general manager of one of the largest teams in Budapest, and my dad signed for the rival team. he went and signed for the rival team. Now it worked out because then it didn't work out for the people hungry because the revolution happened and they all left.
Luckily, a revolution broke out. No,
The
okay.
revolution broke out and they left, and like my father's soccer career kind of came to an end. But the fact is that that would have been an interesting family dynamic.
Sunday dinner would have been great.
I can say this because they're all past now, but my grandfather on my mother's side and my dad, they never got along. They never got along.
Wow.
It was like
It just draws that wedge into things, and you
Oh,
just
no,
never.
I think it was.
You can't get over it.
Never got along.
They'll always be there. When you always look at him, it'll always be he went for the rivals. He went against the family.
Yeah, it's
never go against the family.
And it's
Yeah,
like
the
they didn't
Godfather
have the
quote.
ring
That's
yet.
great.
Like they didn't have the ring on my mom yet. It was like, wow, this is pretty bold. You're still in the just dating period.
That's awesome. I'm coming in quietly,
Yes.
boys. The stories are amazing. Steve, I had no idea. Paul, great to see you. Grumpy Cat wanted to know, does Paul do ASMR videos with that silky voice? Asking for a friend, Grumpy Cat. Great voice, obviously. That's why he's a great broadcaster, too. And then another one, talking about the European leagues, guys. This one says, in Europe, we are sports fans with local players, in parentheses, getting less the higher the league, but all teams are local sport clubs. And if your team sucks, you go down a league, while here people go to an entertainment event that has nothing to do with sports, all entertainment. I think that was outlining what you were saying, Steve.
Well, and maybe I could just touch on that because that's a great comment about European sports. When I played in Belgium, so this is late 70s, when I got over there as a basketball player, you look in the sports page and it's 6 pages of soccer, 2 pages of cycling, and then on page 12 in the lower right corner at the back of the edition was basketball at that time. Now, this has changed since then, but I got to know the soccer culture really well, and I love the European system, to be honest, because it's clear, it's straightforward, it's club-based, it's league-based, it's tiered, and you work your way up as your ability allows you to the level your ability allows you to rise to.
Right.
Here, and again, cultural, and to your point, Steve, we have developed this mess of systems where we have all these competing interests in all these different sports with so many for-profit entities trying to get the attention of and the dollars from families and kids. And then you can get into a whole discussion about what sales tools you use to get their attention and what promises you're making. And there are pure, wonderful experiences available to youth, but there are so many more that I would call highly questionable, where in Europe, you don't have a choice. You're not going to go play soccer for some rogue league that just started up on its own. I don't think. I have never heard of that. You've got the system. It's regulated. Again, you get into the system at the age you want, get into the ability you want, and that's where you play. And it's community-based, it's regionally based, and then it's nationally based. Where here, it's I know there's dynamics in hockey. There certainly are in soccer. Certainly, basketball is in my opinion, a mess. Good things happening within the mess, but it's still a mess. Because of the complexities and the choices and the pressures. So I really appreciate that commentary about the local support.
The big thing that I know readers and friends I have, and I used to write for a lot of European hockey magazines at one point. So I used to have a lot of European readers reach out, and almost that I heard over and over, and also from the editors of the magazine over there, they could not wrap their head around, is the idea that in North America, your reward for being the worst team is you get the best player.
Yeah.
And they said, this is stupid. And I agree. I think the draft is stupid. I think the world will be a lot better without it. And I think sports would be a lot more interesting without it. One, it's boring as hell, right? It's one of the most boring things. People who watch the draft, I'm like, you are worse than Star Trek fans in terms of like how geeky you can be. It's a name. You know who he is. You watched him play. You watched her play. You know what they've got.
Yeah.
But the idea that you force a player to play for the worst franchise in the league because he or she was the best player in college or the best player in junior, to me is ridiculous. You have a salary cap now. Most leagues have a salary cap, meaning they can only spend so much money. So meaning that you can go out into that marketplace and offer that player a contract and say, okay, Connor Bedard, we are the Chicago Blackhawks. We can offer you this much money because we have this much salary space. But then another team can come in and say, no, we're going to offer you this much. And he can make a choice saying, I'm the best young player coming out of junior, and I'm going to make a choice that's right for me. And you know what? I'm going to be unpopular when I say this. I think one of the greatest things Eric Lindros did was kind of say, I'm going to mess up the draft. And you would have no idea how many players at that time secretly were cheering him on, because the idea that maybe he could bust the draft, that it could go to court, that it would be taken, saying, you can't force someone to. Could you imagine you get out of engineering school and it's like, all right, I finished top of my class in law school, and like, the Better Call Saul law firm in Albuquerque, New Mexico, is like the worst law firm in all of North America. And I graduated the top of Harvard Law School, and I'm going to have to go work there because I can't negotiate with anyone else. I can't work anywhere else because they said, no, you have to come here because we are the worst law firm in all of North America. It is ridiculous. And the idea there is that you can sign with clubs at any time. In Europe, you can't trade players because trading is against the players' rights. You can't like say, hey, you know, Matthew.
You can't just get rid of them right off.
There's a radio show in Birmingham, Alabama. We need a couple of microphones. So you're going to go there, and they're going to send us a couple of microphones that are really good. And I've seen this because I've seen in minor sports, there was a player in the NAS that was traded for hotel stays.
No.
Yes.
Hotel what?
Oh,
stays.
my
Like
Wow.
that was traded for, like, you know, teams on the road trips have budget problems, and they got a one road trip's worth of hotel stays in exchange for a player.
Now, two quick thoughts. Number one, what I hate the most is the NBA is the lottery where they put
the draft lottery.
The draft lottery.
Yeah.
I hate that. I loathe that. I think back to Orlando getting Shaq and Penny Hardaway back to back, and my long-suffering, ill-equipped Timberwolves once again getting having the worst record and getting the 8th pick. Do you think though we're just way past with where we could ever do something like that, Steve? Like I just don't see how.
I think we've commercialized the draft to a point where it's become like,
that's a good point too.
Like, we fetishized it, if I want to use that term. Like it. Remember drafts when, like, when I was growing up, they were something you read about. Like sometimes they didn't even get together. They got together like at a hotel conference room, and they did it. And
the players would be mowing the lawn and get a call saying you were drafted.
Yeah, you're going.
Like you weren't going there or anything.
And now it's turned into this giant thing.
I know.
There's, you know, the
suits,
the Grady
the
Dick,
NBA
like, you know, like
annoying.
that
the
NFL
now goes to cities, and it's this massive thing, and they have like a green room full of 50 players.
What bothers me about the draft too, and maybe this is a separate thing, is the fetishization of combines that happened before drafts. And I think of the number of great NFLers who would never have made it in the era of combines because they weren't the fastest. Because back then, you just drafted a guy because you watched him play college ball, and you're like, this guy is good. He's got great sense. He's got great. A guy like Steve Largent never would have got drafted. He's a Hall of Famer. But never would have got drafted.
But I agree with that. Combines and analytics, like to the point where analytics drive whether teams will take a player because of the measurables that they determine. Because you take out the intangibles. Like there's a lot of chatter online about what would Larry Bird be able to play in today's NBA, and most people say, well, he'd kill in today's NBA. But somebody like Dennis Rodman says, well, no, he'd probably have to play in Europe because today's NBA is just way too athletic for him. And but you don't measure a player like Bird by his athleticism and by his, the things that you would look at from an analytics standpoint. You look at, first of all, it's his motor and then his skill set, but then it's the intangibles, like a Largent in the NFL, who just knew how to beat his defender in spite of his lack of speed and size.
And you know what's interesting about the combine, immediately I thought of, Steve, is we're seeing players push back. They're not taking part in combines, and they forego it. So maybe the pendulum's starting to swing a little bit.
Well, you can really hurt yourself in a combine.
Exactly.
Like if you're a
For
top
sure.
prospect.
Exactly.
You're a top quarterback, and you're throwing to some receiver you don't know.
Yeah.
And he's not catching it as well.
You guys aren't on
You
the
go
same
now,
page?
and that's why they're going to even pro days, even at the very least. Like, hey, if you want to see me throw, you want to see me work out, you want to see me catch a football, come to where I am, where it's a scenario and a situation I'm familiar with. and I will show you my best.
But I'll say, like, I'm a hypocrite because the culture of the combines now is moving down into youth sports, right? We're seeing combines. My son went to his first combine a couple weeks ago.
That is
Baseball.
For like 15?
Jeez.
Matt, I wish if I could ask you guys do a show on that about the top-down pressures on youth in sport and just how ludicrous it's becoming.
Yeah.
And what a sham it is to me. Like it's an absolute sham because I'm sure in this combine somebody's making money out of getting these kids here.
Well,
this is not for the great.
It's
good.
The greater
It's
good.
crossing over a bit into the book that I'm writing, that I'm working on, and because it has to do. I'm writing a book right now about race and hockey, about hockey and how its relationship with race. But a lot of that has to do with how hockey does things in a certain way, and how at the grassroots it makes it hard to diversify when we have created this culture of expense, of like gatekeepering. As we like to say, I believe that a lot of people are very honest when they say, hey, we wouldn't discriminate against kids in our program now if they came forward. But the question they're not asking is, why aren't these kids coming forward? Where are these kids? Because for a lot of, like, I have two, and I'm guilty, like I have two kids who are playing, I think, fairly high performance sports. And my daughter is 4 to 5 days a week, and my son is 6 days a week that he's training right now in off season with baseball, and he's in an academy. It's a great program.
Except they don't have black pants.
They don't have black pants. Connor or Taylor with AHP.
You
if
are
you're
a
listening,
traitor to
black
your
pants.
cause, Steve. So
I know, but it's a great program. But we have a long standing. We are professionalizing kids sports. We are doing that, and it's getting lower and lower. And I read Victor Hedman wrote something great in the Players Tribune, I think a year or two ago. He said in Sweden we don't even travel outside our towns for hockey until we're 14 years old. He said, like, this is crazy. Travel teams when you're 10. And he said, like, this does nothing for your NHL pro. I'm going to tell you, like, dry land training when you're 9 doesn't mean a thing. He said, like, Sweden doesn't have rep sports until a certain age. And they don't seem to have problems producing NHLers. If you go per capita, for a country of 9 million people, how many NHLers are Swedish? They don't seem to have a problem with it. But they also say, hey, you need to be with your family a little bit. You need to have fun. And hockey's got to be fun first. And it can't be like high pressure when you're 9 or 10. And I mean, we are now to the point where we're putting highlights from the Brick Tournament. We're like on YouTube and stuff and saying this 10-year-old is going to be the next big thing. And I'm like, I'm reading some books about the 10-year-olds that were the next big things and burned out. And by 12, they hated the sport with every fiber of their being.
Well, they're kids, and we're pretending that they're not. We're pretending we're pretending we're making them so much better and preparing them so far in advance that they're going to be better down the road. I coached a community league team, a bunch of community league teams. I coached all of my sons in community league. But we had a young man, 12 years old, had facial hair, big, strong guy, 5'9" at 12. He was 5'9" at 18. You know, so, I mean, it was, but we had fun. But you could have put that young guy through everything and it wasn't going to make a difference. I totally agree. We are, and it all, to me, it still all emanates from the profit motive and the creation of fear in parents and kids that I'd better get my son or daughter into this program now or they're going to fall behind. No, they're not. If they're good enough, what are the percentages of kids that play hockey that get to the NHL? What are the percentages of kids that play basketball that even play post-secondary, much less professionally overseas, much less the 400 and some jobs in the NBA? Right. Like, you know, it isn't going to make a difference. It really isn't. Let your kids be a kid. Let them be, if they want to play multi-sports, let them play multi-sports. Most of the kids don't have that elite ability that they're going to be able to break through, and it isn't going to be because they did dry land training when they were 11.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, my son quit basketball when he was 13 because we did basketball in the winter. I coached at Northwest in the city.
Okay.
So,
good.
We won a B championship with my boys. Like, it was probably the best year I've had amateur coaching in any year. Like,
so much fun.
11s. I just had a bunch of parents who really bought in.
Yeah.
I just said, we're going to have fun. The start of the year, we were terrible. A lot of boys who'd never played organized basketball before. A lot of them, like, they had to learn how to dribble properly. But I just said, this is how we're going to do it. We're going to take our lumps. By the end of the year, we were beating teams that were beating us at the start of the year, and we were turning scores around. But it was because the kids were just so great, and it was so much fun. Simply because I told all the parents at the start of the year, I got 10 kids on my team. I'm going to figure out 2 units of 5, right? And they're going to get the same amount of time on the floor. So you'll know, like, first half of each quarter, 1 unit plays, second half of the quarter, second unit plays. It's 10 kids. It worked out perfectly for me. They were all there. And I said, I just worked out where they were going to play. I said, where kids had strengths. And I said, they're all going to touch the ball. We're going to be a ball-moving team. We're going to run like heck. And your kids are going to go home and they're going to be exhausted because I said they're going to run. And I said, this is the one thing we're going to do. I don't love a lot of, and we started doing it in the second half of the season. And like, I had a parent that told me, like, hey, my kid goes home and passes out. And she said, thank you, because he's involved. I know that he's playing. I know that he's invested, and I know that he's seen a lot of time. And when he's on the court, he's working. Right? Like, it's not like you're just putting him, hiding him at spot.
And is that kid in the NBA today?
No, but I think that
he had a great experience.
We had a lot of fun.
And the parents
had a lot of fun.
Yeah. Lots of similar memories, and lots of memories as well where it was quite the opposite with parents. So, it can go in any number of ways, but that moment in time in that young person's development, those young people, those families, are something special in that moment that you gave them, because you kind of got to the essence of what community sport should be.
Well, and youth sports just almost in general. And just like, I remember I pulled this up because USA Today a few years ago had the odds of making it to the NFL, and they broke it down. There's this thing, and percent of high school players to make it to just NCAA is only 6.5%. in the U.S. So of all those kids playing high school football in the States, only 6.5% make it to NCAA football. And then the percent of those players in the NCAA to make it to the NFL is only 1.6%.
And I think
it's just so small in how to get, and that is going to be pretty similar across sports.
Across all
NFL.
sports.
And I think the other thing, like a lot of parents, and I see, because in the parent groups that we're with, I see that, and I think it's a bigger question about our society in general, where parents see that ability to go to a college, whether it be in Canadian college sports or American college sports, as being a more reliable pathway for some reason than your kid having really great marks. And in some ways, perversely, it's true.
Yeah.
Because there's so many kids now who have marks that are really good, and universities have very long sort of waiting lists that you kind of see that as your as that ability as a way around. I think that part is really interesting, but I think a lot of part when that 6.5%, a lot of people assume that all the kids who make the NCAA get full rides. Most of them don't. Most of them, you're still paying your tuition, or you're paying partial tuition, or you're still paying, like, it's still expensive.
They just think
to
about
send your kid to
Alabama kids.
university.
They think about that star that's going to be the number one pick,
but
and
they don't
that's
think
college
about
experience.
For example, in baseball, they don't give out as many full rides as they do in football. Actually, and I don't know if this is still true. It was true a few years ago. I said to my son, your sister has a better chance of a scholarship than you, because she plays women's soccer, which is because of Title IX in the United States. And if you're not familiar with that, it means that you have to give out the same amount of scholarships, athletic scholarships, to women as you do to men.
Yep.
So a lot of the schools, to even out all the basketball and football scholarships they hand out, go big on women's soccer.
Right.
And so women's soccer is like a spot where you can excel. Now, women's basketball as well, that's there. But because most schools don't have a women's football program, those football scholarships have to be balanced out somewhere
The
else.
30 or 40 or whatever they're handing out. There's a lot of those to hand out there.
That's for sure.
But a lot of them aren't full rides, right? Like, a lot of times you get partials. You still have to get help. You still have to find ways to get there. It is a hard road. And to get there, you put your kid through a lot, and either your kid's going to handle it or not. My son is exceptionally motivated. Will he ever make it? I don't know. I can't say. He's exceptionally motivated. He loves his sport to no end. But, you do worry that one day he's just going to say, I'm done. I'm just done. You worry with that with your kids, because you understand the stakes everywhere. It seems that even in like the 12-year-old soccer games, the stakes seem to be so extremely high now. It's like the days of like parents like just
Chilling
kids
out?
having an orange. It's really intense.
Intense and intense and not in a healthy way.
No, not at all.
Not cheering your son or daughter on. You're investing way too much of yourself into their outcomes. And I know from personal experience and having made mistakes along the way and having to really gut check and take a look at what I'm looking for from this experience as well. But no, your point's really well taken. 12-year-old soccer game on a weekend. There's going to be, 10 more tournaments coming up anyway, and for too many people, I would put it that way. It's too important.
Mm-hmm.
I was just going to say, Paul and Steve, like your conversation reminded me of when I was playing club hockey as like a 13, 14, 15, 16-year-old. And I did not have a great club hockey experience. I played with great players, had great coaches, but I remember my mom telling my dad, why don't you go to the clubhouse, our team's clubhouse on Sundays and drink with the other dads so that you get in on the gang and the clique. So Tommy starts getting picked for the AAA teams when he should be on the AAA teams. And I was like, that's stupid. My dad's like, he doesn't need that. He's good enough. And the funny thing is, like, those guys that their dads would hang out at the clubhouse on weekends for those 4 years I played club hockey, their sons who weren't as good would all be on these teams. And our team sucked. Our top team sucked. And I'd be getting called up all the time to help these terrible teams. That organization has run itself into the ground. Who could have seen that coming? But it also took away my love for the sport.
It sucks the life out of the love when adults' motivations aren't around your experience. And that can be in any sport. I know basketball players who played at university who after playing there didn't touch a ball for many, many years. It can beat you down. I know from coaching university and recruiting kids, having them come and not having the experience that they thought they would have and not being able to connect that their success most of the time, and not that I didn't make mistakes in reading players' ability, but most of the time it came down, they weren't good enough, they didn't work hard enough, somebody was just playing better than them in a competitive environment. But walking away from there embittered and decimated and destroyed by the experience. But I think the biggest mistake that's made is when adults put way too much emphasis on why they are involved, and the kids are the product for their involvement. And it can be money motivated, it can be ego motivated, it can be any number of things. But I think we've created a culture of hype and expectations that are just not realistic. Your percentages, Matt, that you pointed out, they're right on the mark. But people watch Duke play in Cameron Arena and go, God, that'd be fun. Well, sure it would be if you're good enough.
Yeah, for those 12
that'd be
guys.
great.
Right.
You know what would also be fun is be one of the dudes jumping up and down because your grades are good enough you got into Duke.
Right. Yeah.
You know, that'd be a
Just
good
in the
way to be
student
part
section.
of it. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's a dream of mine. Like not playing. I'd love to just sit in the student section. I'm a Blue Devil fan, so like even better.
I've got a moment I'll share with you. It's a seminal moment. Steve, my oldest son, played at Northern Arizona University, and they played Kansas in their opening game in Steve's senior season. So we're in the Fog. We're in the arena that is one of the iconic arenas, every bit as, in fact, more iconic than Duke, because that's where James Naismith went after he invented the game of basketball in Massachusetts. He went to the University of Kansas. They've got his original basketball rule document in their museum, along with Wilt Chamberlain and Danny Manning and all the other. I mean, it's like a Catholic being in the Vatican. You know, I mean, it's just so.
You wanted to just live there.
Oh my God, it's just ridiculous. So the game's getting ready to start in the Fog Allen Arena. The starting lineups are getting ready to be announced. All of the people pull out a newspaper while they announce Northern Arizona's starting lineup. and the announcer goes in starting as, blah, 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 real low. Then all of a sudden it starts for the Jayhawks. Everybody tears their newspapers up, throws them up in the air. So there's this massive amount of confetti flowing down, and the hype, the dance. I mean, it was like, again, goosebumps, because it was just so amazing, that tradition, right back to the very start of the game of basketball, of that kind of connection. They have this saying, rock, chalk, Jayhawk. And that's their chant, rock, chalk, Jayhawk, because there's a lot of chalk in the soil down there. And it was an agrarian university at the beginning of its roots that they've just carried forward. So I just wanted to share that, because there are those seminal moments that are so special. And very few kids play at Kansas.
Yeah.
Very few kids play at Northern Arizona. A lot of kids were up in the stands that had grades good enough and got a good education and were part of that culture and part of that experience. And that creates a lot of meaning in their lives.
100%.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And I think, getting back, like what you were saying, Tom, about the dads in their drinking clique, right? And that helps, because it absolutely does.
Yeah.
And
100%.
and I know that, as I've seen that as a parent, and I think, and I talked about how the professionalization of sports is going down and down and down into youth sports, and every year it seems to get younger and younger. But at the same time, and I know this might sound like I'm contradicting myself, but the big problem that is that we have a lot of wonderful volunteers in sports.
100%.
Absolutely wonderful.
The vast majority.
The vast majority. But there is a time when some people aren't, especially when you get into the rep teams and stuff, that it's not necessarily the best situation that you have all of these well-meaning volunteers in these positions. Because I think, you talked about the dad cliques. I think we see the volunteers on the boards, and they get in because it's like it's the parents of kids who are in the program, and it's like protecting those kids.
Yeah.
Vested interest.
You have vested interest in being like the treasurer of this team. You have a vested interest in being this, because it makes sure that when the selections are made, your kid is somewhat protected. And I think this gets back to the idea when we talk about diversifying sports, about making it more open. And I'm not blaming any parent for doing it. I get it. I think that it's you do it. You do anything for your kids. But I think this is the problem, is that I think more and more sports teams have to look at this, that, you have volunteers at a certain level. But like I remember years ago talking to Dominic Hasek at an All-Star game. And he said, like, the idea of me when I was 12 years old in the Czech Republic being coached by a volunteer is ridiculous. Like, we wouldn't have, like it wouldn't have happened. Like, the head coach of a youth team would be paid for that job, right? So that those vested interests
That's that
are
European
gone.
club system.
The European
I was
club
referring
system.
to. That's
that,
what
like,
they do.
The coach of your minor league hockey team wouldn't be a volunteer. Like, your minor hockey program would pay that person, and that would be his or her job, to be the coach of the U11 AAA have team. And therefore, that coach is making decisions because they don't have a kid on the team.
Best interest of the team at that point.
It's now, who are the kids? Where's the right? Because the hard thing is that, let's say you have a parent, and I think we see this, that protects the kid, and let's say the kid is playing at a AAA level, but only the kid is getting nothing out of it. I see this at the baseball level for years at AAA, or even at AA, where there's a kid who's terrified because they see a kid who's throwing 70 miles an hour, and they're like, you can see they just don't want to be there. And it's no fun. They're not learning anything about the game. They're not invested in the game, just like my basketball kids. If you would have put us in an A level or AA level, we would have got killed. We were kids who were but we played at a level that we went down, we got to our tier that we were supposed to be in, playing with other kids at that level, and they could learn at that level because they could get concepts. It wasn't like they were being overwhelmed by teams. When you're overwhelmed, it's no fun. When you lose a basketball game and the mercy rule's already that you can't cross half court by the second quarter, it's no fun for the kids. It's no fun to lose a soccer game 12-0. It's no fun to lose a hockey game 13-0. It's no fun to be sitting on the bench on a AAA team because the coach has figured out, you're on the team, you wear the jersey, but you play one shift a game. It's no fun. And I think that we get into this idea that we want our kids to play at the top level and be in AAA and be wherever, when we don't think, well, what's the what's appropriate for them, what is going to be fun for them, what is a level that is right for them, right? And I think that's a big part of it. Like it is, I've had, those experiences and I get it. I totally get it. I totally understand why parents do that and why you do it. Because otherwise you're not going to volunteer for a team that your kid's not part of.
True.
So it becomes the politics that just is inherent. So now I'm saying that, we have too much professionalization in the sense of how we view youth sports and the training and the hours and the road trips and the travel and the expense that comes with travel. Ask me for baseball how much I traveled this year and how much I spent on just going to hotels across Western Canada. The fact is that is the culture we've created. Parents seem to love the road trips. There's a lot that just like, oh, my kid's on a road trip. So it's like they're 11 and we get to go to the Lloydminster Best Western and it's great because we're on a road trip.
I know that one.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, you do.
Yeah, exactly. We all, a lot of us know as sports parents.
Tom, that's a great summary. Now, I coached all of my sons all the way up through university. At different levels, high school, university, community league. So that's a whole different topic. I tried hard to hit the balance and probably, if anything, was harder on my kids than I was on the others to try to create the culture on the team inappropriately, because being harder on my sons was not the right way to do it.
You didn't want to have favoritism.
I did want
so you went the other
favoritism.
way.
I went the other way.
Too hard, much the other way.
One thing, when you were playing minor hockey, did you have to live away from home?
No.
You didn't?
No, I didn't.
I always I've always been quite amazed at that culture in Canada, as it being so accepted for the elite of the elite kids going away from home when they're 14 or 15 years old. Right?
Yeah.
That really floors me, that is as accepted as it is, because like you were talking about before, Steve, about kids being with families and being with their families, just being kids. Like you're turning them into a pro awfully young, and very few of those players are going to make it to the NHL.
True.
Some might play ACAC, youth sports down in the States, but even that's a small percentage of those kids. So now you've lost 15 to 18 years old with your kid, and then after that, he's done with hockey. How do you feel about that? That coming from the States, that was something new to me. And I'm not singling hockey out, because believe me, I have lots of comments on the mistakes being made in what I believe are mistakes. There's 7. The last I heard, there's 7 basketball prep schools in Calgary now.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
and I'll tell you what, that's a whole different.
But does that balance out? Like, because there's a lot of Canadian basketball high schoolers or something that head to the States now for that development.
To go to prep school, it's the same thing. Yeah. It's the same thing. They go out east to prep school. They're going to Calgary for prep school. Coming to Edmonton, there's a couple of prep schools in Edmonton now. So that has now taken over into other sports as well.
My son had 2 kids that he knows Edmonton they're his age, so they're B15 now. They moved to BC last year to go to an academy for baseball. So what I'm talking is that the hockeyization is now spreading to other sports. And I think it's because the hockey parent culture is very strong, and they tend to be involved in other sports too, and it's spreading. There's a number of kids that move from all across Canada to Okotoks to play at Okotoks Baseball Academy.
And that's the big baseball program.
Yeah, that's the big thing.
Play at Okotoks. So
it's like Notre Dame of hockey.
Yeah,
Saskatchewan.
It's like
which now is basketball too. It has for a number of years.
And it's like these prep programs are. But the thing is, the prep programs, your kid makes it and it's great. Your kid gets picked into these programs, but then comes the price tag that comes along with it, and that's when you say, hey. So a kid from the inner city, and these are the stories that drive sports, right? The kids who had nothing and have to fight and claw to get into these programs. We're kind of turning those stories away, that there are not going to be as many kids coming from the projects in the United States to play in the NBA or in the NFL, or the barrios of stuff like Maradona, who came from the poorest of the poor in South America, in Buenos Aires, to be a soccer star.
I'll respectfully disagree.
Okay.
From the standpoint of, if you're identified as a top tier athlete in a particular sport and you don't have the means to be able to compete, oftentimes there will be whether it's benefactors, sponsors, corporations, or whatever. But also, one of the secrets under the covers that is a big criticism of a lot of these prep school programs are the kids who come with the means from their families are paying extraordinarily high tuitions to pay for the kids who don't have the means, but it's not transparent. And so there's a lot of discussion about that. But your point's well taken. But that whole prep school mentality started in the States in basketball for the kid who was graduating from high school but didn't have the grades to go to a major school, so they had to go to one of these select institutions in order to get their grades up so they could be accepted. Now it's trickled down to the point where U.S. high school basketball has been decimated by prep schools and academies. Yeah, absolutely. And the same is happening in Canada, right here in Alberta. Kids are going to Ontario, out to the Maritimes, down to Calgary, staying in Edmonton, and going. The best players oftentimes are going away from their high schools.
It's baseball Alberta is being decimated right now at the AAA level. So like you go there, so many kids, and I think we're going to see what my son wants to do next year, but in the academy programs, because the academy programs offer 12-month a year coaching. They offer the kind of programs that these kids are looking for. They don't have volunteer coaches. They have full-on guys. Most of those guys have generally played in the NCAA or played some level of professional baseball who are coaching the kids. And parents en masse are choosing to go the academy route. And even though it's very, very expensive, they're choosing that route, and it's cleaning out baseball Alberta. It is amazing how fast it's clearing it out of the top players who would have normally used to play AAA baseball in baseball Alberta are now playing academies.
In hockey, Steve, that has happened. The academies took over. Club hockey got steamrolled, and the academies took over. Basically, it was a way all the best players were going to pump a bunch of money, put them in this academy. I was told a story of an academy out west in BC where 4 parents bought a home in, I believe it was Kelowna, and each parent would take a month to take care of the 4 kids, take them to hockey, make sure they're eating, make sure everything's good. And that's how they did the system. So you've got club hockey in Alberta that's kind of floundering around. You've got these academies that all the parents think that they have to spend, upwards of 40 to 60 grand to send their kids to play there because that'll give them their best chance. Now we're seeing the next evolution of that, and Sean Bell's a GM and coach in the JPHL, where it's like it's almost like a hybrid system. You're not paying that much, and it is a specialized league and system, but at the same time, you're getting that attention from the higher ranking junior teams and all that. So it's already broken off into that next branch, and the next phase of the evolution is starting to happen hockey-wise, at least now, and it's just at its infancy too.
Well, last year I was at, and this is again for the book I was working on, the Hockey Diversity Alliance, Akeem Aliou's group, with a group of NHLers of color. They launched a pilot project in Toronto and some of the inner city neighborhoods. So like in some of the roughest, I was in Flemington Park with them, another area in northern Scarborough, where they had camps and signups for free hockey, that they were going to provide free hockey for kids who just absolutely couldn't afford it. And then, as they explained to me, as they tried to get into leagues, there was a lot of pushback. And I think a lot of the pushback, from what I understood, come from the parents in other parts of Toronto who are spending like you're saying, the tens of thousands of dollars, saying, you guys have NHL coaches, because a lot of these players had volunteered, or former players, and these kids are getting it for free. And there's pushback against that, right? Like that idea that these kids, and I think this gets back to what you say about the academies, because I don't think we're seeing that as much in Canada as we are in the United States. What you were saying about the the funding the kids who are
tuition
needy.
higher for
the higher tuition for the parents that can make it.
And
It's
I
here too?
disagree. No, yeah, it's here.
Yeah, we're
It's
not
here.
haven't seen it in baseball yet here.
Yeah, it's
We're
here.
still
In
but
basketball.
it's definitely that same kind of thing where you create now all of a sudden the resentment of the have parents and for no fault. And I think the other part that we don't think about in this, and this is something that's brought up, is with those road trips and stuff. A lot of parents, like, we don't all work 9 to 5 or have that ability to take time off work. Like, I'm like, it's amazing, like, that even I sometimes I'm like, how am I going to get to this tournament this weekend? I got to work. I got to do things. And I can't imagine a parent, let's say, who owns a restaurant or works in emergency services or doesn't have a 9 to 5 job. How do they get, like, when they start saying, your kid's going to have Saturday, Sunday tournaments on the road every weekend? Well, I can't drive them. I can't do that. I'm working. We have a family business. We have something else. We have to find people to help us, the rides. And that gets back to the Alphonso Davies stories. I mean, not that we're getting back to it because we haven't talked about it yet, but Alphonso Davies made it because his parents didn't have a lot of money, didn't have a lot, because other parents stepped in and got him to practices, got him rides to where he needed to go. And that's those things that have to happen.
And I totally agree with that. And they do and they should and they need to happen. But what we've injected is this very, very this very, very difficult set of number of models into people's lives, forcing them to feel like they have to make choices that they really don't have to make. I don't want to paint everybody with the same brush. Some kids are just so driven and dedicated. They're probably going away to a school that really specializes at a younger age makes sense. That don't want to paint that. Like staying in their local community in terms of development, in terms of challenge, may not work for them.
Their ceiling's not high enough.
Exactly.
They need to go somewhere where
Yeah,
there's personal ceilings higher than where,
exactly.
yeah.
So you need to do that. And again, you look at Europe, they do the same thing. I mean, they identify kids in a lot of the European countries at a very young age, like who's special. You certainly know that in hockey, like in the better hockey. I mean, but they're playing in their club, in their community. They're just playing at the best club in their community with the best resources.
Yeah.
So anyway, I don't want to paint people with the same brush, but it is happening in Canada, and unchecked, and I think we need clearer leadership from the national sports organizations and clearer guidelines, so we can, from a administrative standpoint, try to rein this in. Right now, it's the horses are out of the corral, and it's a lot harder to put them back in, because every time you try to, somebody else spins off a new way that they're going to do things. But I do think it just keeps getting, because the horse is out of the corral. Like I talked with a mother from Great Britain who sent her kid to an academy down in Calgary. He was living in a mouse-infested room with 4 other guys, not eating properly, not getting a proper education. But her son had a dream. I asked her, did you come over and look at the school? Well, and where he was going to live? Well, no. The guy said it was going to be great. I said, geez, Mom, get on a damn plane and go over and see where your 16-year-old is going to live. Like, how you send somebody. But a slick talker got him over here, took her money. Now she's wanting justice and that. And I said, well, ounce of prevention might have helped in this situation.
Yikes.
Paul, sir, Shoot for the Moon, Steve Sandor, Edify Magazine, Tom Gazzola, Matt Iwanyk, also with here on the EST Hangout. This has just been an amazing conversation. And I now just want to switch it a little bit. We're a little more to the professional side of things. And Paul, your expertise is basketball. Steve, you love the world of soccer. And let's look at the Canadian teams with that. Big summer for the men's national team in basketball with qualifying for the World Cup in 2024. A lot of hype around them in moving forward. And I guess we'll start with them before we get to the soccer team. How big of a deal is it to be going to Paris for this national team? And I guess for Canada in general, like the trickle down of that.
Yeah.
Well, the trickle down effect, it started with I think it really came into focus with the Raptors winning the title in 2019, certainly. I think there's been a lot of frustration over the last 15 to 20 years with the Canadian men's national team not able to break through and to qualify for the Olympics. We all know that we have the talent in Canada, but it's been the ability to harness the talent and get the talent to play, because most of them are NBA players, and that just requires a different level of financial investment than Canada basketball has had the ability to do in the past. Canada basketball financially has struggled for decades to really get its fiscal house into a point where they could afford to professionalize their national team programs. Under their new CEO and president, Michael Bartlett, and their board of directors, they've done a great job of fundraising, sponsorship acquisition, working closer with Sport Canada to own the podium, to get the funding. Now they've professionalized their entire coaching staff on both the men's and the women's side. I mean, you had Nick Nurse, and now the new coach is the head coach of the Raptors. So, I mean, they're committed to coaching Team Canada. They have made the effort and the investment to get most of the best NBA players to participate, as well as some of the other war horses who have stuck with the national team program in their dark days. So now you're getting the best talent with great programming, great preparation, and buy-in. I would liken it to the Dream Team and Redeem Team down in the United States. So you have the Dream Team completely shattering the rest of the world in 1992 in Barcelona. But then 8 years later, Americans losing the gold medal. Yeah. So the Redeem Team was brought about, and you got Kobe and LeBron and everybody to buy in to regain that supremacy that the U.S. expects of itself in basketball. Now I think what Canada has done is gone to their athletes and say, we need a commitment from you. If LeBron can commit, you can commit. And so now they're getting that from most of their best players. So they had their best team they've probably ever had, I think, talent-wise this summer, and 2 or 3 more pieces that could be available next year, like Andrew Wiggins. So
Jamal Murray.
If
he wasn't there, right?
Yeah, and Jamal would have played if he wasn't injured.
Absolutely. That's a pretty good couple of good pieces.
That's not bad. That's not bad. That's not going to hurt you on the court. So
NBA champion Jamal Murray. Oh, we got to add him. Oh, how are we going to fit him in this lineup?
A bronze medal team this year with add Jamal Murray and Andrew Wiggins. I mean, they're a threat to be among the best in the world. And in some respects, I think that team could very well be better than the team the Americans put on. I would go out on a limb and say that, even if they have LeBron and KD.
Really?
Yeah, because LeBron and KD are old. These guys are young. And I think, there's this young group of talent. I mean, Jamal Murray is a killer. He is a killer. He's an NBA, bona fide NBA champion. Wiggins is an elite defender. And
an NBA champion.
And an NBA champion. You got 2 NBA champions.
He won the year prior.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you. So it's a big deal. And it's a big deal for basketball in Canada and the inspiration that it provides for youth. Mm-hmm. So it's great. And I would extend that out to the women's team, because Edmonton has been so integral in the women's teams moving up to 4th in the world, as we've been their national training center since 2013. Mm-hmm. And then I'll throw 3x3 in there too, with the Canadian women's team winning the world championship this year, led by Catherine and Michelle Plouffe from Edmonton, who are the 2 best 3x3 players in the world. So, the future's bright for basketball, and the future's bright in terms of numbers of participants too, like the growth that we're seeing now that we're post-COVID, and that's kind of leveled itself out, and kids are back and participating. The numbers are starting to go up again, to the point where we're just seeing great growth. And if the men's and women's teams are successful in the Olympics, then I think we're going to see a huge spike.
I think one thing, and I had the pleasure of covering the 2 Canada World Cup qualifiers here at Edmonton, the basketball, and it amazes me because those are the guys who are playing in Europe, right? Because the NBA was in season, and just how, and I guess it gets back to the point what Paul you were talking about. There's only 400 jobs in the NBA, and there are a lot of really great basketball players, like guys coming to college every year. A lot of great Canadian players, And I think you see it in the CEBL. When I was struck right away when I went to my first CEBL game about how good the quality play was, right? And how, like, there's a lot of great players playing in Europe. Like, and I looked at some of the players that I spoke to, like Melvin Edgem or Kenny Cherry, who are playing in Europe, doing their trade, and these are great ball players. They are, and I'm sure the European game has gotten so much better in the Eurobasket than as the NBA has gotten better, and the level of play, like even for these guys who can't get into the NBA and don't get that chance, but they're playing and having a great career in Europe. I was just stunned watching in practice, in games, how good these guys are.
The depth, to your point, the depth of talent in Canada is huge. It's over 400 male and female basketball players are playing Division I in the U.S.
That many?
Yeah.
Jeez.
It's a lot of kids.
Yeah.
I mean, when you
It's like almost expected now that we're gonna have a lottery in the NBA, or like a first rounder. It feels like it's like I remember when Bennett went first overall.
Yeah.
How big of a deal it was. But now, like, it's kind of like, oh, Canadian went top 10. Okay, cool.
Yeah, well,
like, we're at that point now where it's like, matter
of fact,
absolutely.
And there are no secrets in Canada. Like when Steve and Jermaine Buckner were playing at Shep, you had to really work to find Division I opportunities for those kids because the scouting system wasn't that as extensive as back then. So there was a lot of work that went in behind the scenes. They don't have to do that anymore. If you're good, you're going to be found. You're going to be identified. And so very few kids are under the radar now because there's so many opportunities to get seen. And so much of the U.S. basketball world is looking north of the border now for those diamonds in the rough and hoping to pick up a kid here and there.
How big is the CBL to all of this and having a local or national professional league for this?
Well, I think it's essential. Yeah. Having gone through the minor league basketball wars myself with the Edmonton Chill and the Edmonton Energy, which would be a great book. But I always use this metaphor. The highway is littered with the white crosses of dead minor league basketball attempts, both in the U.S. and Canada, of just people that go, yeah, let's have a league. And, they think they're going to sell places out, and they just don't. Like the CEBL is a unique success story, largely due to the willingness of one man to fund it as a startup through COVID to keep it going, and now get into the world of private ownership, which will, have its own growth issues as well. But to answer your question, Matt, it's really important. Now local kids can see professional players playing at home, see how big they are, how fast they are, how athletic they are, how good they are. And hopefully that will be the inspiration for them to pursue their professional dream, because it isn't just getting to the NBA. Like, it's a great opportunity for kids to play in the ACAC in any sport, certainly youth sports. It's fantastic. And then all of the different levels down in the States, if you're good enough. But if not, you're playing rec basketball. That's great too. You're playing 3x3 basketball recreationally. That's
so much fun to watch.
So much fun. Oh yeah, 3x3.
That's so incredible to watch.
Yeah, it's a great sport. So I think the CEBL is critical. I hope it can continue to grow. I hope it can thrive. I think they'll have some challenges down the road. It's a very short season. I don't know if that's good or bad yet. I'm not sure. But I do know what it is it's great on the court. The Stingers put on a fantastic show. Everybody went to a game, enjoyed it.
Yes. Yeah. I saw you when you and Doug were finishing up a broadcast. But and so many kids there.
Yes.
Paul, so many kids and a good mix in the crowd. And you're right, it's highly entertaining. It's encouraging to see the investment locally in it.
Yes.
In regard to just getting the stadium up to snuff. Finally, it looks great in there. There's a vibe. There's a pulse.
It's a vibing.
We never had that before.
And think of Hall D 10 years ago.
It was decrepit.
It was
totally
just
decrepit.
You looked like you'd see, rusted out vehicles down on the ice.
You'd go in for K-Days just for a little thing.
And you're like,
I need to get out of here. There's not much going on here.
Yeah.
The dogs are running around. That's about it.
Yeah. Now it's It's fantastic.
It
The
is.
lighting in there is great. I mean, Steve, you cover the team too. It's just fun to go to.
It is.
There was a lot of
They've
talk of the
created
Riverhawks this summer. They deserved it.
Absolutely.
100%.
But the Stingers were also right there during the summer, and
Yeah.
amazing things happening down at the hangar.
The
I
hangar.
miss calling it the highway.
I do too.
Yeah, no,
I
the
do too.
hangar.
But,
Now, you brought something up, like with the timing of the league and the shortened season. That comes back. Is that something alluding to like getting players and having? Because I know there's a ratio as well. You need an X amount of Canadian players. If you want to bring in an import, there's only a small window of time you can bring a guy in from, say, Europe or whatever. Is
Right.
that part of the growing pain or struggle?
It is the challenge. The timing of the league challenge, Tom, is very real because you've got your Canadian players wrapping up their European seasons because you can't make enough money in the CEBL for that to be your full-time job. You could be like Jordan Baker, who was coaching and playing as well, but very few players are doing that, although Brody Clark will probably be doing that this year. He's not going back to Europe. He's helping with the Bears, and he's going to stay in shape. But that's the exception, not the rule. And that presents very real issues. If you've recruited and signed a player from Europe and his team goes deep into the playoffs, you might not get him till mid-June. So, roster carry forward is a challenge. Roster certainty can be a challenge too, because there again, you've got young men playing basketball overseas for 9 months. They hop on a plane, fly here, and they start playing. They don't get any time off. So there's no rest. So they have timing challenges that thus far they've been able to overcome. I mean, when you had Xavier Moon here, who I think this year could make the breakthrough and finally sign a full-time deal with the Clippers. It'd be fantastic.
Wrong team, but
yeah, I totally agree with that. But Lindell Wigington from the Maritimes, who's with the Milwaukee Bucks. So great things have happened. So, but they do have their logistical challenges for sure.
As Paul has been talking about Canada basketball, I get a lot of similarities to Canada soccer and just the things like the funding and needing to, get their ducks in a row, and it hasn't been there for all these years. And I think of Canada soccer, and we've seen the men's national team get to the World Cup. The women's team has done unbelievable things for 20 plus years.
Yeah.
They go get the golds at the last Olympics. Men's side gets to the World Cup. But is there a lot, behind the scenes, is there a lot to be excited about with Canada soccer? Because it just seems like there's just a it's not even, I don't know if I could call it a train wreck. Because
Steve is going through pain right now.
It's
I can just
already
see it
been
in
a
his
train
eyes.
wreck. So what's worse than a train wreck? Almost it feels like with them. Like there's more. Like behind the scenes, listening to you, it seems like it could be an excitement of what's
Very
changing
much so.
there. I can't say the same about the CSA.
No, there was a tremendous opportunity that Canada Soccer had. Obviously, with the women getting medaling and then finally getting the gold medal at the Olympics, doing fantastically well. The fact that the men, have a couple of generational talents, and we talk a lot about development of soccer systems and how much of it is how much better we've gotten with our academies and with our systems, and how much of it, and a lot of times in soccer, it's a little bit of luck. It's a little bit of genetics. You have a couple of special players who happen to be born around the same time. So you have Jonathan David and Alphonso Davies, who are born around the same time, and they're playing together. I mean, you see this in soccer. You see countries that are always going to be strong. Your Frances, your Germanys, your Argentinas, that are institutional, right? Like soccer is institutional. They have a pipeline. And even Croatia, a country of 4 million people, right?
They've
that
built
just
something.
has a pipeline because they have a strong system. They have a strong club system. They are a sporting nation that, blows me away. And I think in basketball, too, you see that with Croatia. But soccer is just like when you say, how do you get to the World Cup Final Four as many times as you do for a nation that is smaller than the city of Toronto, right?
Yeah.
It is smaller than most major American cities. How do you do that over and over? Canada doesn't have an institutional excellence, right? So we don't know yet if this is a blip of a couple of great players or if we're on the right track. Now the results are not happening for this Canadian team. Our coach has left. Our coach, who was John Herdman, who was the biggest cheerleader for the program, over the last year, was clearly been trying to get out for about a year. John, and now he's coaching Toronto FC. He's taken a job with arguably the worst team in MLS and arguably one of the worst teams in North American professional sport, the biggest rebuilding job, from being the coach of the national program. What does that tell you about how badly he wanted to get out of the national program? That here he was, this star coach who could motivate and did all
with the
sorts
stream
of
team
interesting
too.
things. Yeah.
Like, let's not forget the team he was coaching with Canada too.
Yeah,
Like, you gotta add
and,
that.
and John was this out of the box coaching thinker. I mean, I love Spock talking to John. He was the guy that would make guys read Viktor Frankl, who was a Holocaust survivor, because it inspired him. Before the Canada games here at Ice Teca, where they played at Commonwealth, he brought in Phil Jackson to talk to them about living in the moment, about understanding what a big moment
Wait, Phil
is.
Jackson was like
That's
did,
cool.
Phil Jackson knows John Herdman.
did he fly in or there's just
I
like
think
video
they
or
did
something?
but he
I
brought
had not
Phil
heard that
Jackson.
story at all.
Phil Jackson taled to them about
He was in Edmonton?
not
just-
letting the moment.
And you
guess video.
didn't call me?
Yeah, no, I don't think. I think they did this over. But he's brought in speakers to talk to them, and he had Phil Jackson talk to them about not letting the moment overwhelm you, like about being present in the moment, but not forgetting what got you there, not forgetting what makes you excellent, not letting that moment overwhelm you. So John, he had done all of these excellent things, and then the program takes no advantage of qualifying for World Cup. They take no advantage of the women winning gold. The women don't play a home game for how long, right?
That's right.
The men go off, and all of a sudden there's a talk, and we'd heard about this, about the financial issues around Canada Soccer. I understand it took them months and months and months to pay the rent at Commonwealth Stadium for those two games. The issues around this team and around the finances, there's obviously a lot of talk about the Canadian Premier League and how it's being run. And I think there's a comparison, because the Canadian Premier League and the CEBL launched the exact same year. The CEBL his games are on national television. CEBL has a profile. CanPL is
It's a
doing
place you
okay
wanna
in
be.
a couple of cities, but they have two teams on life support and one team that's already folded.
Yeah.
In FC Edmonton, and two teams in Valor FC and York that I would say are York is now owned by the league again. Like
Oh,
the
did it?
second team, yeah.
Yeah.
York
Jeez.
is owned by the league because the owners had to step back and they're trying to sell it, just like FC Edmonton. And there was no serious offer. There were a couple of people who kicked the tires. But the thing is that I see a lot of the issues in Canada, and it worries me more on the women's side, maybe because my daughter's so vested in this. We saw at this last Women's World Cup, even the United States, the powerful United States, were kind of left in the dust.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, Europeans have now embraced women's soccer, and they're bringing that club soccer mentality. And so now all of a sudden, my daughter does not dream of playing in the NWSL. She dreams of playing for Arsenal.
Oh, Champions League?
Yeah, no, playing for
Well,
Arsenal.
yeah,
in
but,
English
like, it's
women's
the
league.
Champions League, all of
Because
that.
what
You
they
could
did
dream
is
for that
those
if you're a woman,
clubs
though.
decide to all have women's teams. And you know what's the funny thing? I've learned this from the girls that my daughter's around. They don't dream of playing for some team that has pink jerseys and has a name like that's named after a fuzzy animal. They want to play for the same clubs the boys play for. So when the English teams all started the women's team, so that there's Chelsea women, Arsenal women, Manchester United women, and they wear the same kits. There's Paris Saint-Germain women, there's Bayern Munich women, and that's who they want to play for.
But don't you think? I think what you're identifying right now, and I'd love to understand where the financial issues come from, because there's like the number of kids playing soccer in Canada is astronomical, like so far ahead of any other sport. Like where their financial ineptitude comes from, I'd love to understand. But I think we go back to the system that what we have right now is a crapshoot. We have a shotgun approach in sport in North America, in that you're hoping you have a generational talent show up. Is really what, you know, like I was talking in glowing terms about Canada basketball. I'm just talking the tip of the iceberg. Down below it, I still regard it as an absolute mess.
Okay.
But at the tip of the iceberg, they've focused on what they can control, which is national team aspiring to excellence. But I'll use 3x3 as an example. They didn't do anything to deserve this. The Plouffe sisters took an interest in 3x3 basketball because Steve, my son, and Team Edmonton on the men's side were having some success internationally, which had no funding from Canada Basketball. They did that out of their own pockets. They got no funding. It was either through Our events in Edmonton are their own pockets. Nothing from Canada basketball because they wanted to achieve something. And the Plouffe sisters took an interest, and they funded themselves now until this last year and a half. And so Canada basketball had a gold medal team plopped in their lap. So those are those generational talents. Is there any depth being built in 3x3? Absolutely not. Nothing. And but in soccer, it's the same thing. You've got all these people doing all these things in all these different ways, while in Europe and in the world, they've got their systems in place. And this is how you play. This is how you develop.
You know what the path's going to be.
Yeah.
You know the pathway. It's crystal clear.
The thing that I've seen with the Canadian, like the American style was copied by the Canadians for a long time. The American way of playing on the women's side, I'm speaking to soccer, was that you put together a bunch of elite athletes and their individual brilliance would win out. So
Right.
you had your
Same
Mia
in
Hamms,
basketball.
you had your Brandy Chastains, and all of a sudden that's not working. The American way is no longer working because Spain and Sweden kind of go, no, we have all these women on a club system. We're playing possession-based soccer. And they look for soccer players, not athletes. And I noticed that even when clubs here are picking players. Now, and I don't want to get to my daughter's experience too much because it's too personal, but I do see it that there are certain clubs that still look at the girl that puts her head down and takes on 3 players and doesn't pass. And it's like, oh, she's great because look at her, look how fast she is. And then the girl that pauses and says, that's a dumb thing to do. I'm going to pass to the open player over there. They say, oh, she's not brave. It's actually, no, she's the one that's
She's using the brain at that point.
She's the one that's actually the tier 1 talent because she understands that you don't, in any sport, you don't walk into a double team if you can avoid it. You move the ball. You move the ball. And Spain showed everyone, and all these women who play at Real Madrid and Barcelona, all studying that same system, were like dominating the rest of the world. And I'm going to tell you, the Americans and the Canadians, unless we rethink our system, Canada, we just got by Jamaica. Like, it wasn't like we stomped them to get that Olympic spot.
And that was just the recent qualifying
at
to get
the World
back
Cup,
to the Olympics for
we
next year.
showed that when we played Australia, out of our depth with Australia, out of our depth. A lot of the Australian women are playing in the English league. And you see that pipeline now of women, and they see some of the Canadian women. Now, the best example is Chloe Lacasse. She's 30 years old, and I think she's sort of like a Plouffe sister story. She's playing at Benfica for years, and no one in Canada even pays attention. She doesn't make a national team. She leads the Portuguese league in scoring. She doesn't make a national team. She has European team. Arsenal finally signs her, and Canada finally brings her on to be like a sub-type player. And it's like, why? Because she's a technical player. She's not like that kind of player that strikes you right away as an overall athlete, but she's a pure goal scorer. Mm-hmm. And this gets back to my thing about combines and whatever, but she has a soccer IQ that is off the charts. That European clubs see it. They're like, oh, yeah, she's worth it. She's now playing for one of the biggest women's teams in the world. She's making good money playing at Arsenal. And, they had 50,000 fans at their opener, for their women's league game.
But they recognized her technical ability and saw a role for her to be able to utilize her unique skill.
At one point, she was so frustrated that Canada was not looking at her. She was looking at getting Icelandic citizenship to play for Iceland.
Come on.
Yeah,
Jeez.
because she has some long-standing connection, and it didn't work out. Now she's playing for Canada, but she had to wait till she was 30, right? And because she doesn't fit that model, even though that no one is paying attention to her. Chloe Lacasse is a wonderful story, but also makes me really, it's an indictment about everything that's wrong about our Canadian system, that sometimes we get so tied up in athletics, and individuals still put your head down and play, rather than are you playing in a system. And then you look at the Spanish players, and I mean, wow. And my daughter, she's got now she talks about the Spanish players. Those are the ones the Canadian players aren't inspiring her. She's like, look at Aitana Bonmatí. Look at Olga Carmona. Look at the way that they play. Look at the way that they share the ball. Look at how they have 80% possession in a game. They're like, you can't score on us if you don't have the ball.
What's interesting, and if you guys don't mind, I'll take it as a crossover over to basketball development.
Please.
Steph Curry is a phenomenal shooter. So you walk into any YMCA gym, you see kids standing outside the three-point line, putting the ball up towards the basket, practically shattering the backboard because they want to shoot like Steph Curry. well, you can't unless you really practice and really develop that skill set. I forget who it was. Somebody said Steph Curry's done more to damage basketball because now everybody wants to be as good as him because he's just so darn good. But when I had the opportunity to watch Chris Paul, Dwayne Wade, and LeBron James work out in Tim Grover's gym in Chicago many, many years ago, 2008. What they did is they worked out for about 2 hours. The most basic of drills, shooting drills that everybody does, just the most basic things. Then they went out and played 2 100-minute games against a bunch of other NBA and Division I pros, Division I players and NBA pros. The guy who stood out to me the most was Chris Paul because of how slow he plays. Knowing how to go slow in basketball is one of Chris Paul, even though he's diminutive in size, he knows how to go slow and when to go fast. He controls the pace of the game. One of the greatest things basketball players rarely learn is the retreat dribble, because you talked about head down into double teams. Same in basketball, head down into double teams, as opposed to recognition that the double team's coming and backing up with the ball to create space so you can pass over it, pass over the double team before it happens. Chris Paul's intelligence is why him at 5'11" or 6 feet is going to be a Hall of Famer. Never won a championship, but a lot of players, most players don't win championships. But it's like that fundamental skill, and that's what kids, players, coaches don't understand. So much of it is the IQ, the way you think and see the game, not that the fact that you can blow by somebody and dunk. Because you see a lot of guys that blow by somebody and they'll dunk in a game and they have 2 points. At the end of the game, the kid that couldn't jump has 20. So, like you really have to learn the skill and the nuances. And that's where I think in soccer, I'm projecting, that's what you see is the difference, is the way they think the game, the way they execute the game with enough physical skill that they're not overwhelmed by the opponents. Is that a fair assessment?
I guess a Canadian player from Edmonton who went over to Germany for a trial at a German club. And he got sent home. And he told me, I asked him how the experience was. And he said, the training was doing the training drill. I wanted to kind of show them what I had. So I went and I dribbled around one defender, went around a second, and then the coach blew the whistle. And so that's great. Why'd you beat the second defender? And he's like, well, I could go. He says, but when you beat the first defender, you created 2 open passes to the middle. Why aren't you moving?
There you go.
Mm-hmm. Why aren't you moving that ball to the guy who's right there in front of the net?
I can get it in.
Because you created that space already. Why are you then? Because all you're doing is taking the ball further away from the net, and you're not efficient. You have to be efficient, and it was almost the way he said it was like they saw that as a bad thing that I wanted to take on 2 or 3 players, and because they don't do it, they're like, no, use your teammates. Mm-hmm. This is where you have to think about, are you putting yourself, and this goes back to when I coached the 11-year-old kids. The first thing they would always do is they would dribble their head down and they'd go to the corner. I'm like, why would you go in the corner? And they're like, well, dribble. And then I go, then you're stuck. You have 2 defenders who are surrounding you. You have nowhere to go.
Right.
I said, get away from there. Right? That is not where you want to be. You want to give yourself options. Left, right, where do you want to go? And move the ball. And why are you dribbling down this wing when you had 2 or 3 passes? And that's what we always worked on. But that was the thing about letting the ball do the work. I would say this, and it's the same in most sports. And I think that our team sports like that, basketball and soccer, and I've said to people that I think basketball for soccer players is great because soccer coaches often get frustrated with players who don't run off the ball well. And I said, basketball is all about cuts and running off the ball and how do you move away from the basketball. And that teaches you that. And I think that there's something, and I've said this to people, a good year, just even playing at a lower level of basketball, just where you're comfortable, just to learn that ability to cut and learn that ability to move away from the basketball will make you a better soccer player and make you more aware of your movement off the ball. Yep. I'm just a big believer. I'm a big believer like you in multi-sports.
Well, I think would say the exact same thing. It's just Wayne Gretzky's talked about, a lot of older athletes have talked about how they had, you play multiple sports.
Right.
And I've always looked at it actually physically. I feel like you're just working on muscles and different movements of your body to develop that. I didn't even think about the intelligence part of it and how you could transition from one sport to the other, just the ideas of certain things and pick what might work in a different sport. And
Well, and I think what you need to do is you need to encourage kids to try at younger ages, but to continue to pursue them when they get older as well, because you talk about specialization. Again, you have to look at circumstances. Sometimes it's the right thing to do. But if it's not the right thing to do and the young person genuinely wants to play other sports, let them play other sports. They're not going to the NHL. They're not going to the NBA. So, like, let them play other sports. Have fun with. And to me, that's the power of the school sport experience, is having fun with your friends and classmates.
And if they're good enough to make the NHL, they will still make the NHL probably
still
too,
make
right?
it.
Like
Yeah.
you could still go play that other sport.
100%.
And there's probably still a really good chance they're going to make it to that show if they are of that quality.
100%.
not gonna
100%. It's not. It can help, but it's not essential that you go to elite programming for everyone.
I started this by saying this was, you guys, very thoughtful, intelligent, all of that. And we've had that conversation today. We're almost up right away here.
Wow.
Got a lot of messages in the nasty chat. I've got some texts coming to me. Loving this conversation that we've had this afternoon. But I just want to now bring a little bit yourselves. Paul, I'll start with you. What do you have going on? And you talked about working still with 3-on-3. What are the days of Paul Sir like right now moving forward, and what can we expect?
Well, my wife and I took a month and went to Los Angeles.
Yes.
So we hung out there. And one of the great moments there was going to the UCLA Hall of Fame. And you talk about those special people showing up, but seeing Lou Alcindor, then Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's jersey. They have John Wooden's home office in its entirety in a glass encasement there.
That's cool.
And just the history there. But it was amazing, because for me as an older guy, remembering all the UCLA championships and and going through that, but just being able to see the actual trophies of Walton, Alcindor, Gail Goodrich, all those great teams, that was really special. But also, I'm a big tennis guy too, so seeing that Arthur Ashe and Jimmy Connors played at UCLA too, and their tennis history, it was really special. So we spent a month in Los Angeles, and now working with Due North Events and our funding partners to plan for next year's 3x3 event, which will be July 5th to the 7th.
Oh, it's coming back?
100%.
Nice.
Fan
Awesome.
Park again.
Excellent.
We had almost 100 grassroots teams this year competing as well, outside of the big dome that we put up over the courts.
Which was cool, by the way. It just looked neat.
It looked good, didn't
I
it?
thought so, yeah.
But we want to expand that. Like, we have lofty goals in terms of building this into a much bigger community contingent as part of that, and really growing the entertainment and arts part of it as well. And that'll be like 3 weeks before the Olympics, so we'll be one of the last tournaments in the world.
Is that why it's earlier?
Yeah.
Okay, because usually it was the last couple of years. It's been at the end of July.
Correct.
But
Yeah,
so
we had to bump it up. So we'll see how that goes. So we'll really be focusing on that, and then I'm forming a not-for-profit. Myself and my wife are forming a not-for-profit centered around 3x3 that will be focused around community opportunities for 3x3, in-school opportunities, because it's so easy and it takes away so many of the economic barriers and the cultural, the equity, diversity, and inclusion opportunities with 3x3. It's really got its own niche in the basketball world. So I'm going to be focusing on that, and then there's a couple of other side hustle things I'm going to look at too. But
Always hustling, Paul.
always hustling. Yeah, the old guy can still hustle. Still playing tennis.
Oh, yeah?
Excellent.
Do you still play basketball?
No.
No?
My knees. I got really bad knees,
Yeah.
but I can play tennis because that's very horizontal and I'm very slow. But that's okay. All right. Not a bad forehand and not a bad backhand.
Have you tried
Nice.
pickleball?
I have.
Because JMO's a big tennis guy, too, and he loves pickleball.
Pickleball's fun.
Yeah.
Pickleball's fun. Annoying noise, like that
Is it?
wiffle ball noise, just
Yeah.
drives me nuts. But
Plink,
it's
plink,
for a
plink.
purist. That's a tennis snobbish remark. We go to some tennis tournaments here and there too. So like Indian Wells and the Opens and stuff.
That's
so
amazing.
That's cool.
Edify Magazine, also Urban Affairs, writing a book.
Working on
Covering
those
the
things.
Outs, covering the
Covering the
Oilers.
Oilers.
Other than that, you're
What
just
else are you
sitting
doing?
around.
You're
Yeah.
driving kids to practice. What do you got,
kids to
Steve?
practice. Yeah, it's the magazine's going great. Edify, our top 40 issue is going to be out in October 31st. And our top 40 event happens on November 28th at the Windspear. So our 15th top 40 under 40. Urban Affairs at urbanaffairs.ca. We do a lot of covering of urban issues around the city, maybe some stories that you don't know about. So go check that out as well. Yeah, still doing my freelance work covering the Oilers and Elks for various sources and other magazine work. And then, yeah, I'm working on this is my 10th book. But this is not going to be a work of fiction. It is a biggest project I've ever taken on. So I'm signed with Beacon Press in the United States. They're known for their work in social justice. I've done a lot of books about equality, justice in different areas. And I'm really thrilled that I'm going to be writing a book for them about the race and hockey and the relationship between race and hockey. As a white writer, as someone who's covered hockey as a for a long time, talking about and really opening my eyes to some of the bigger issues in hockey. Certain things are getting better, certain things are not getting better. But between about the institutional issues that exist in the game that make it harder for it to diversify. And I've spoken to a number of players. I'm speaking to some players tomorrow. Also, a lot of people who are, executives in certain programs, and people who work in grassroots organizations like Free Play for Kids here in Edmonton, like Apna Hockey that's based in Edmonton and is spreading out with the South Asian community, giving those kids a great chance to play hockey for the first time. There's other programs in the United States as well. But it's really opened my eyes, and it's been a real education for me, and it's become a much bigger project than it originally started. It's probably doubled in word count. It's probably really increased in scope, but I'm really thrilled that this publisher is really behind this project, and that it's going to get that major release. It's still going to be about a year away. It's still a lot of work to be done, but really putting this together has been a thrill.
Awesome.
Very cool.
Well, they honestly really enjoyed this last couple of hours. This has been a joy.
Yeah.
So thank you, Paul and
Fantastic.
Steve, for coming in, and hopefully have you guys back in on the Hangout at some other point.
It's been a real privilege and a lot of fun. I love what you guys are doing. Congratulations. What you're providing to not just Edmonton, but any of your subscribers is something really special, and you deserve to be congratulated. I was talking with Mr. Crushell beforehand about the demise of the
He'll now be in on Monday, by the way.
Yeah. We were talking about the demise of the previous sports station, and it was it's the classic Out of the Ashes, the Phoenix Rises, and you guys have really done something special.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Paul.
It's great to see there's other opportunities, and I think we're all starting to see how this media landscape in so many different ways is gonna crack up and reorganize and remake itself. And I think a lot of this is we're gonna be doing a lot of this stuff. Grassroots efforts to reach your audience, and it's great to see. I mean, 100%. It's thrilled to be on today.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Coming up next here on Edmonton Sports Talk, it is the Lock Shop. Dusty and Huss will have you covered with the stuff happening tonight. Not a lot of action, but they'll also look ahead to maybe a few more things coming up in the next few days in the sporting world, and how much Edmonton kind of took cool bet with their Oilers parlays yesterday. We kind of
Mr.
took
Lean,
them for
of
some
course,
money.
over here.
They set the lines very terrible
yeah.
for themselves. They really let it for us here in Edmonton. And then at noon, you're back with Dusty as the Oil Stream will be on. Oilers dominate the Preds, winning last night 6-1. So you guys will have more reaction. That gets set for the Flyers game tomorrow. On behalf of Paul Sir, Steven Sandor, Tom Gazzola, I'm Matt Iwanyk. Thanks for tuning in to the Hangout. Stay tuned. In mere minutes, it will be the Lock Shop with Dusty and Huss. Thanks for tuning in, and enjoy the rest of your Wednesday.